Hey everyone, so as you can see, we're live and ready for the interview. But before I jump into the questions here, I'll just let everyone know how today's interview will work. I do have some scripted questions that I'll go through with our guest, and then I will verbally invite for viewer questions at the end. So without further ado, hello everybody, my name is Mark Allard-Will, and I'll be your host today. But as you can see, I am not alone. I'm joined by fellow Canadian author Jessie Pyne. Jessie, could you introduce both yourself and your work to the viewers, please?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm Jessie Pyne. I am a brand new Canadian author. My series is called The Dreaming Trilogy, The Banished World. It is based in a fantasy, kind of picturesque fantasy world with the dragons and the elves and stuff like that. And my teenage characters get trapped in this world and immediately think they're there to rescue it. But I take on a whole different direction with it where I say, no, actually, if you threw a 15-year-old in a fantasy world, they'd probably freak out and no one would want their help. So I'm kind of looking at it from a really hyper-realistic stance with magic and dragons, and it's a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. So as you touched upon there, you're currently publishing a fantasy series called the Dreamwing Trilogy. And fantasy, as a fantasy fan myself and a mythology fan, it's very clear to see that fantasy finds its roots in pagan mythology. So, for example, Tolkien found his inspiration from the sagas of the Vikings, and for the Percy Jackson book series, it is, of course, Greek mythology. So I'm wondering, has mythology inspired your world building in the Dreamworld saga? And if so, what sources?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a big fan of Percy Jackson too. Like Tolkien, Narnia was a huge one. Was one of the I think Narnia was one of the first like real fantasy series I got into. Um, and like it's lots of I like the lore. I like the like Celtic lore and the like Arthurian lore. I'm using a lot of Arthurian lore in Dreamwing, and just like the old like stories of fairies and goblins and the tricksters and stuff like that. I have lots of encyclopedias and stuff on different fairies and goblins and things like that. That's the kind of thing I love. I love taking like those old wives' tales and bringing them forward and giving them a bit of a more modern twist, a more realistic twist to fit into my world.
Fantastic. I'm interested that you said Celtic mythology and the pagan Celts because I did a video a while ago where I argued that some of the worst monsters or the nastiest monsters in pagan mythology were actually the Celtic fairies because what they do is they lure people into the netherworld with this fantasy of you can live forever and be youthful forever. But then when you get bored of it and you drop back into the real world, everyone you've ever known has died because 400 years have passed. So it's actually this horrific thing that terrifies the human mind, this horrific thing of what if everyone just leaves? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Playing off my last question there, writing a trilogy takes a lot of story development planning. For new writers watching today who are perhaps looking to begin writing their own series, what one piece of advice would you give to them to help get them started down that road?
Um, Always know where you're going and where you're starting. Having stuff in the middle when you first start out is just gravy. But I find that I get the most plot I get is while I'm in the middle of a writing session where I just let the characters take control. So have your characters really fleshed out and well rounded so they can run the story for you rather than try and have every little thing planned out. And also, when you're in the midst of publishing something, I didn't really realize is that you're going to have to tailor your writing for whoever you're pitching your story to. So you're going to have to do, like they say, when you're doing a job interview, you need to do a lot of research for whoever you're interviewing with. It's the same thing with book companies. Every book company is going to want something different from you, and you really have to tailor it according to their needs and their wants. Or else you're just, if you just send out a generic copy to everyone, you're going to got a lot of rejection letters back.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's really good advice that's going to help new writers watching today. So fantasy is by far my favorite genre. And so for me, it speaks to me in the sense that it hits upon the grandness of gesture, the idea that adventure might give us some meaning and find us more fulfilled. But what do you think it is about fantasy that makes it so enduring in the public consciousness?
Well, I totally agree with you too. It's that fulfillment of like just especially like people like me, people like my friends who struggle with mental illness, struggle with feeling like they're not accepted, struggle with feeling like we're just weird and we don't belong. To have that idea that you could go to this other world and be a hero, be someone worth knowing, be someone amazing who can right all the wrongs and fix all the evils. And that is like that's something we all want. Whereas I also like the idea of like the magical aspect, the powerful aspect where you can snap your fingers and have a spell work, or snap your fingers and have lightning strike your enemy down. Like that sense of being so powerful.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. So now we'll open it up for viewer questions, and while you're taking the time to type those out, I will just take a moment to inform you all that there is a link to Jessie's website in the description of this live video, and I'd thoroughly recommend that you go and check it out. I'm a big fantasy fan, so I'm definitely going to be purchasing a copy of Jessie's latest book, The Banished World, and I'd recommend that you do the same, please. And all right, so no viewer questions right now, so we'll just wait around for a second. But did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't know. These ones always catch me off guard. It's like adding stuff. I should talk about. I was originally headhunted at the annual conference in Calgary. It's called When Words Collide, and that's where I met my editor and got into the publishing company when Books We Love, and got my book published. And I was actually looking forward to speaking there this summer as well, but unfortunately because of the pandemic, it got canceled. But what I was going to talk about, my panel was going to be getting to know, befriending the voices in your head on character creation. It's one of the things that I'm most passionate about, because I truly do believe that if you can make and create real people with wishes and wants and stuff, and you can get to the point where you're having conversations with your characters in your head, you don't need to think too hard on your plot, because they'll just run it for you. Because it's just going to be like, if you put any person, like any real person in any situation, that you're going to have to know how they will react, or how they will deal with any sort of situation. So once you have your characters in a way that they're real to you, like people that you can have a conversation with, then you could throw anything at them and you'll know exactly what will happen afterwards. So that's the first thing I tell people, is like, make sure you have solid characters, because everything else will come after that.
That's really wonderful advice as well for character creation. Yeah, thank you for that. So we do have a couple of questions that have come through. First one here is from Elaine. I really like urban fantasy with some grounding in the real world. So your series sounds awesome to me. As a reader, do you prefer stuff like this, or more pure fantasy? So I guess I'd add in there like high fantasy, like Tolkien.
I like all of it. Like definitely, like each world is so unique. And if I can get into a story, I'm not really picky about whether it's like urban fantasy or high fantasy. I just like, because my book is urban fantasy, I definitely have a soft spot to it. So it's definitely something I'll migrate towards first, just because I like to see what authors are doing in my chosen genre. But yeah, like I said, like we talked about Tolkien, we've talked about Narnia, and we've talked about all those completely other worlds that are set. Like the one I just finished was Mistborn, and that's set in a completely alternative universe. I love those ones because I love seeing the cultures and the world building and how everything has come together in this alternate world. Like, that's awesome.
Awesome. And then Audrebellion asks, do you have a favorite character in your series?
Well, that's like asking me if I have a favorite child. Yes, but I'm not going to let them know. No, I've got my four main characters. So it's Tessa and Kazel and Rainey and Thorn, and they all narrate. Like take turns narrating. So it's definitely like if you have children, I love them all for different reasons. So like Rainey is actually a personification of my best friend Ricky, and when she was 15. So it's based off of like when I first knew her in high school. Tessa was originally supposed to be a personification of me, but she just kind of went and did her own thing. So now she's like nothing like me at all, which I think I like even more about her, that she's come so far and being so different from how I am. Kaisel's very much like my sister. Like, she's got my sister's personality, which is quite funny because I'll go and I'll ask my sister, I'm like, okay, so this is the situation. What would you say here? And it'll be some snarky, sarcastic answer that'll be absolutely perfect. And Thorn is my sweet little teddy bear who can like kick your butt but wouldn't want to because he wouldn't want to upset you. And he's definitely the personification of my like anxiety and my social anxiety and my fear of like upsetting people and stuff like that and the dealing with it. So it's all different aspects of my own personality that come together in different ways. So there's something to love uniquely about each of them.
Fantastic. So there's no more viewer questions here, but I'm going to ask a question that just popped into my head here. What is your favorite book of all time?
Oh, that's hard. Well, if we're like, obviously Harry Potter. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. But like just for like story, I think I'm gonna have to say Ella Enchanted. By Gail Carson Levine. It was one of the first ones I really like when I was first finding more and more about fantasy. That was one of the first ones my friends gave me. Said, you got to read this, and that one always stuck in my head just because it was such a well thought out. Once again, such a well thought out world surrounding these characters, and even though it was supposed to be kind of like a Cinderella retelling, it was so much its own story. And so that one's always going to be like first and foremost in my head, like that nostalgia, like, oh yes, Ella, that was my baby once upon a time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jessie. This has been a really wonderful
Thank
experience, and I'm so glad you could join me today. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone that tuned in. My next interview will be Thursday with James Davidge, and I hope everyone can join me there. Thank you.
Like, share, subscribe.